Hey everybody, welcome. It is Friday. I'm excited to do this lesson. It's going to be a pretty good one, I think. Today's lesson is 3.3. It is about function notation. Now, this is something that when I was in school as a kid, this always kind of, I thought looked weird and it sort of confused me, but the more I dealt with it, I'm like, you know what, it's really not that bad. So don't get too panicked about this one. Let me adjust that a little bit. This is actually going to be a pretty easy one. I don't think it's going to be too crazy. So you guys are used to seeing equations like this. Like this is what we call standard notation over here, where it's just y equals something x plus whatever, right? This is a very basic format, a format you see a lot. Those of you who did like the little warm-up questions that last day we were in school, remember how they would say, okay, go ahead and take this equation, and then it would say plug in 3 for x and solve it, right? And so people have probably in the past said, okay, if they give me this situation, it says I'm going to make x equals 3, so I'm going to plug 3 right in there for the letter x, and they could work it out. 2 times 3 plus 5, and obviously we could do that without any issues. And so we could say when x equals 3, y equals 11, right? And so usually you're used to seeing it in this format where they'll give you an equation, they'll put a semicolon, and then they'll tell you what number to plug in to the spot where the letter x is for the variable. Now, kind of a twist on that format is to write things like this, which we call function notation. You'll notice it looks a little bit different, right? It looks a little stranger because my letter y is now this f parentheses x thing. Now, that's really not how you pronounce it. But basically, the letter y is the same thing as this f with the parentheses and the x. Like these, you can think of these as interchangeable. Like they're synonyms. They are the exact same thing. So don't let this bother you. This is not multiplying. This is not f times some number that goes in here. It is not multiplying. This is just a way of saying f of x is how my teacher said it way back in the day, back in the olden days before there were cell phones and internet, right? We called it f of x. And basically the f is representing that this is a function, right? Now, does it have to be the letter f? No. Sometimes they do it with different letters. Other commonly used letters I see, sometimes it'll be a letter H, sometimes it might be a letter J, sometimes it could be a letter G. I don't know why they pick those letters, but they can pick any letter they want to. So don't have a panic attack whenever you see this crazy looking thing. Basically all it means is you've got a function, a g of x, f of x, k of x, m of x, whatever. Don't let it bother you. It doesn't really mean anything too crazy. What it does tell you though is that you're dealing with a function, and it also tells you that whatever variable you have in the parentheses, that is the same variable that you have on the right hand side of an equal sign. So because we have an x in here, I know I'm going to have an x in the equation, right? There's no way they could put like an x right here and then here it would be a w. No. That's not what it's going to be. So it's just basically telling you, hey, this is a function, and then this is the variable we're going to be using after the equal sign. That's really all it is. Don't let it bother you. So how do these work, and what will the questions look like? Instead of the book showing you this, saying, hey, here's your equation, take the letter x and substitute 3 in the place of the x, they will write this instead. They'll just write this. They'll say evaluate, because evaluate means solve. They'll say evaluate, and then it might say f parentheses 3. And that's all it'll say. You're like, what? What does that even mean? All that means is take whatever number they gave you for the number in the parentheses, and basically you just plug it in the spot of the x. You can plug it in here, you can plug it in here, right? And so if I had to work this out, I would say the function, when I plug in 3, equals, okay, just put a 3 right here. Anytime I see a letter x, I'm going to put a 3 in that spot. And I could say the function, when I plugged in 3, equals whatever this is, right? 2 times 3 is 6, 6 plus 5 equals 11. And so this would be my answer. So I'd say when the x equals 3, the function had an output of 11, right? This is almost like your input and your output, your domain and your range. When we plugged in 3 for our input, for our domain, we got an answer of 11 for our range, for our output. And then basically that's all it is. So don't let it bother you. They could do 3. They could give you this one where it says like f equals -1. That would mean you just put -1 in the spot of the x. 2 times -1 plus 5, right? If they said f parentheses 0, you would just put 0 in the spot of the x. 2 times 0 plus 5. If they said f parentheses 100, right? Don't let that bother you. All that means is put 100 in the place of the x. So whatever they give you in the parentheses, that's what you plug in the spot of the variable. And that's it. Okay, so don't let those hurt your brain. They're really not as bad as they sound. Okay, alrighty, next. Our book is a little bit weird. This really is not the most important part. Really what I just showed you on that first board is the most important. But what they will show you is some questions in our book about how you interpret these. How could you read this, right? And so they might give you scenarios such as this one. This is straight out of our book. If you have your book at home, you can find it in there, and if not, it's okay. It says let f parentheses t, so they're using t this time instead of x. That shouldn't hurt. It's not going to be a big deal. Let f parentheses t be the outside temperature in degrees Fahrenheit, t hours after 6 a.m. So the number in the parentheses is how many hours after 6 in the morning. Right? Explain the meaning of each statement. Okay. So f of t is going to represent how hot it is outside, t hours after 6 in the morning. Oh, geez, my phone's ringing. I'm just going to let it ring. So right here it says F0 equals 58. So this means the temperature the temperature 0 hours, right? Remember, this is how many hours after 6 a.m. So this means the temperature 0 hours after 6 a.m. That just means right at 6 a.m., right? The temperature at 6 a.m. was 58 degrees, right? 58 degrees Fahrenheit. We were measuring it in Fahrenheit. That's all that means. The 0 means we're 0 hours after 6 a.m. All right, if this would have said a 1, if it would have been F parentheses 1, we would go 1 hour after 6 a.m. and we would say 7 a.m., right? The temperature at 7 a.m. was 58. If this had a 2 in here, we would add 2 hours to 6 a.m. and say 8 a.m. The temperature at 8 a.m. was whatever. So that really all you have to do is just kind of interpret what it's saying. So here's another one, F of 6. So this means the temperature 6 hours after 6 a.m. Okay, we got to use our brain. What is 6 hours after 6 a.m.? 6 hours after 6 a.m. is at 12, right? At 12 noon, which is actually 12 p.m. The temperature at 12 p.m. was, oh, they didn't even give us a number. They said in. Okay, we're just going to put in degrees Fahrenheit. I guess that's the variable or something. The one down below it here, where it has F parentheses 3. Okay, this means the temperature, I'm just going to put temp to save time. The temperature 3 hours after 6 a.m. 3 hours after 6 a.m. would be 9 a.m. Temperature at 9 a.m. was, oh, now we have a statement, was greater than, okay, this is kind of weird. I've never really done an inequality before. Was the temperature, what is it greater than? It's greater than F of 9. That means 9 hours after 6 a.m. Oh, geez. What's going to be 9 hours after 6 a.m.? 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3. 3 p.m. So the temperature at 9 a.m., 3 hours after 6 a.m., was greater than the temperature 9 hours after this, which was 3 p.m. That was kind of a hard one. And then finally, the last one, I made this one super easy. The F parentheses 4 means 4 hours after 6 a.m., so that would be 4 hours after 6 a.m. is 10 a.m. The temperature at 10 a.m. was 75, right? That's the most simple one. That's the most basic one. Okay, not too bad. Hopefully that one made sense. They'll always tell you what variable you're using. They'll always tell you what it represents, however many hours after 6 a.m., however many minutes after a certain period of time, however many whatever, they'll meters after a certain distance. They'll tell you, and then you just interpret it, write it as a sentence. Really not too bad. Okay, we only have 2 more, and then we're going to be done. The third board, how do I use function notation to solve for the independent variable? This is the opposite of what we did at the very beginning. At the very beginning, they told you what number to plug in for the letter x. Now they're going to tell you what to plug in for the output, the f of x or the g of x, and we're going to have to figure out what number do we have to substitute in here to get that answer, right? This is the opposite of what we did at the beginning. Find the value of x so that the function has the given value. So here's our function, f of x equals 6x plus 9. They've got the semicolon, and they're saying this. Notice the difference. This is different than this. Do you see the difference between these two, right? This over here in red, this is telling you to plug 21 in the spot of the x, right? Because the 21 is in parentheses. That's what we did on the first board. This is saying the f of x, way over here, this equals 21. They're saying, hey, the answer, the output, the range, the output on this is 21. What number would you have to plug in for x to give me an answer of 21, right? And so what we're doing on this is actually just putting 21 in the spot of the output, where the y usually is, and then we can solve this. Solving it's going to be super easy. The hardest part of this is just making sure you write it correctly. 12 equals 6 times x, and obviously x equals 2. So we could say, you know, if x equals 2, f of x equals 21, right? If we plug 2 in the spot of x, 6 times 2, and then add 9, we would get 21. Okay? Either one of these would work for your answer. Same thing down below. I use a different letter just to get you used to them throwing a different letter at you. Here it says g of x equals 2x minus 12, and then they give you the semicolon, and now they say g of x equals 4. Now g of x equals 4. So way out here, g of x, this equals 4. What number would I have to have substituted in for the x for my input to give me an answer of 4 as my output? This is the output out here. And so this is the same idea as we just did. Instead of minus 12, I'm going to do plus 12 on both sides. We learned how to solve these equations last year or in chapter 1. So this part I'm going to fly through. 16 divided by 2 is 8. So we could say the answer is x equals 8. Or if you want to be a little more fancy pants, you could say if x equals 8, then f of x equals, oh no, this isn't f, this is a g. Then g of x equals this, right? Then g of x would equal 4. So just be careful on how they word that you don't plug it in for the wrong spot, right? If it says f of x equals 21, they're talking about this, way out here, the output. If they just said f parentheses 21, remember this, if it just says evaluate and it says f parentheses 21, then you're putting it in right there. But they'll usually be very specific on that. It's not usually a trick question. Okay, the last one, and then I promise I'm done. They may ask you to graph one of these. They'll say, hey guys, graph this one. J of x equals 2x minus 3. Okay, don't let that bother you. We really haven't graphed it all this year, so I'm hoping you've done this in 7th grade. If you haven't, here's how you do it. Normally you make an x and y table like this, right? And you pick the easiest numbers you want. Pick the most simple numbers you can come up with. Maybe you say 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, something like that. You don't even have to pick 5. You could pick negatives if you wanted. I just like to pick positives. Usually you say x and y because you have the x-axis, right, and the y-axis. That's usually how you do it. This is technically j of x. And so really instead of the letter y, if I wanted to be really specific, I would have x and then I would have j of x. But if you just put a y there, I'm not really going to be mad at you. Let's just be real about it. And then you just substitute each one of these in here. This should be pretty simple. I think you've done this before. If we put 0 in the spot of x, what would we get? Right? So if I work this out, 2 times 0 minus 3. Some of you can do this in your head, obviously, right? 0 minus 3 is negative 3. If I put 1 in here for the spot of the x, I put 1 in the spot of the x. I'm just going to take each number I picked and plug it in for the x. If I put 1 up there, that would be 2 times 1 minus 3. Okay, 2 minus 3, that's negative 1. If I took the next number in my list, 2, and stuck it in there for the x. If I plug 2 up there, 2 times 2 minus 3. That's 4 minus 3, that equals 1. And you could keep going with every single one of these. If you put 3 in here, for the letter x, you would have 2 times 3 minus 3. And if you can do these in your head, you don't have to write it out. 6 minus 3 is 3. And some of you can obviously tell, look what I'm doing here. I'm going up by 2's every time. Adding 2, adding 2, adding 2. So I know this next one's going to be 5. I mean, you could actually work it out if you wanted, but it's not really going to do you any good if you know it in your head, right? 2 times 4 is 8. 8 minus 3, you can see it was 5. So make a little x and y input-output chart, right? Here are your answers. This is actually the list of points you're going to graph, right? I'm going to graph the point, 0, negative 3. I'm going to pick a different color because the black on the black is probably not going to show up very well. 0, -3 is one of the points on my graph. Boom, right there. The second point right here, 1, -1. 1 to the right and 1 down. These probably need to be in a line. If these aren't in a line, that's a clue you messed up. 2, 1. 2 to the right and 1 up. Whoa. I didn't make my dots very straight. The third one, 3, 3. 3 to the right and 3 up. And then 4, 5. 4 on the X, 5 on the Y. 1, 2, 3, 4. Up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They should make a straight line. Mine look a little bit wonky just because I'm not a professional graph drawer, and probably my dots are probably not, I probably didn't space them out perfectly just because I freehanded it there. But there you go. That's all you would want to do. Make up your own little chart. Pick the easiest numbers you can come up with. Don't pick hard numbers, pick easy ones. Plug them in for the spot of the X, work it out. If you need to work it out like this, great. If you can do it in your head, awesome. And then just graph them. So that's it, guys. I'm going to stop this video right here. Hopefully you can handle the questions I'm going to put on the Big Ideas Math. Feel free to email us if you have problems, and I will help you all in another video next week. We'll see you. Have a good weekend.